Hi, my name's Dennis and this is Dennis Elanius, videos about the various things I do to keep myself entertained since my cancer diagnosis. Today's video revisits a project I made several years ago to add individually controllable RGB lighting to the back of my TV. The project stopped working when I lost track of the tiny USB Wi-Fi dongle that provided network connectivity to the Raspberry Pi that controls the lights. It was an Edimax WS2812B which I bought in July 2013. Having moved house since I last used it, and then into the nursing home, it simply got lost. Alex, my husband, hunted high and low for it and couldn't find it, so I ordered a new one. It was the exact same model number, but version 2 instead of version 1. Little did I know when I bought it that the two are completely incompatible. They use different chipsets, and so the drivers for version 1 just don't work with version 2. The Raspberry Pi was running Raspbian Stretch, which reached its end of life in July 2020. This means that I can't update the operating system to keep it secure, and I can't install the new drivers I require to get the Wi-Fi working. The solution is to install a new version of Raspbian and the required drivers, and then add back the software that controls the lights. So the first step is to take a backup of the SD card, so I have the LED software, before I write the new operating system to the card. Okay, so I am now running Ubuntu in Parallels on my Mac, and this is the way that I'm going to image the SD card that I've just plugged into the computer. So first of all, I need to know what the drive is called, and if I do a df, we can see that SDB1 and SDB2 are the two file systems that it has mounted. So I want to unmount those first of all. And I need to put my password in. And I want to unmount SDB2 as well and check that they have indeed gone, which they have. Lovely. So now I can run the command dd, which is the disk imaging software. if, the input, is going to be /dev/sdb, and the output file is going to be LED image, and it's the date today, 2024/02/17.img. And then if I hit enter, it says permission denied, so I need to do that as root as well. And now it seems to be happier. And I could have had it do a visual thing showing, its progress as it writes blocks. But another way I can do that is simply to open another tab in the there we go. I can just press that to get another tab, which is zoomed out again. I'll zoom back in by same amount to make it easier to read. And then if I do an ls-lh, that will show that so far it's written 256 megabytes of that image. Now the drive itself is 4 gigabytes. Much of it will probably be empty, so it doesn't really change the speed it's going to do it, because it's going to write it byte by byte, but we can keep track by just repeating that command. In fact, I could tidy it up a bit just by listing the files that start with LED, and then we just get that one answer. And we're already at 493 megabytes, so this isn't going to take all that long. But there's no need for you to wait, of course, because I can just skip to the point that it's finished. Okay, so I've just done a bunch of things which I inadvertently didn't record, but essentially, having completed the image of the drive, I took a copy of it to my Mac, where I'm not touching that file, so that I've got a full backup that's just not being touched. And then I mounted the version that's inside the Ubuntu virtual machine using the command kpartx, because the ISO file contained multiple partitions. That then automatically mounted the drives I wanted. And I'm now going to take a backup of the whole home directory in that backup of the SD card, because that's what contains all of the files relating to the LED software. And I want to get all of those files, so I need to do it as root. And then I'm going to create a tape archive. J means it's going to be a bzip file. C means I'm creating it. V means it's verbose. F is the file name, which is going to be in my home directory. I created an LED folder, and that is going to be called home.tar.bz2. And I forgot to tell it what I was going to put into that, which is the home directory. Okay, there we go. That has done that, and that has worked without any errors. Next, I want to have a look in the etc directory. No, that's the home, that's the wrong one. That's the virtual machines one, not the one I'm looking at in the backup. So let's go to media parallels root fs etc and ls. I'm just going to take a copy of that folder as well, just in case. It just makes it easier to see what's in it. So back to my previous command of creating an archive, and then I just need to change the names of the file and the target, and there we go, that's done. Next then, I've got my backup. I don't think there's anything else in particular that I need to be worried about. So my next step is to write an image back to the SD card with the latest version of Raspbian. Okay, so I've done a Google search for download Raspbian image. If I go to the link here, it seems the name of Raspbian has changed to Raspberry Pi OS since I last worked on a Raspberry Pi, and I know that I am using version 1 Raspberry Pi, so the 64-bit version isn't going to be compatible. It's 3B onwards, so that means I'm going to need a 32-bit version. I don't want the desktop. Command line is fine for this, and you'll see that the light version is actually less than half the size of the desktop version and considerably smaller than the one with recommended software. So I'm going to download that now, and then when that finishes I can write it to the SD card. I didn't realise that I can just select the operating system from there, but I've downloaded it now, so I can just go to do a custom image and find that in my downloads, and there it is. Seems to be happy with that, and choose storage. That is going to be the card reader there, and press next. And let's do the OS customization settings. That is fine. Yes. And that's now writing to the drive. Isn't time travel wonderful? I had to sit through that, but while it was going on, I have retrieved the Raspberry Pi from the TV, had to take its case apart to unplug the GPIO connector, and so now with a written SD card, I can pull that out of my computer, put it into the Raspberry Pi, and let's boot it up. Okay, so here's the Raspberry Pi. I do love these Pimeroni Pibo cases. Particularly seems appropriate when it's controlling multicoloured LEDs. So if I plug some power into that, it should boot up. And we can watch the process. through some first boot processes here. I wasn't expecting that. Another reboot. Okay, so it turns out that it remembered the settings I used last time I wrote an image to an SD card, and has used the login details I gave then for this, which wasn't the behavior I was expecting, but there we go. The host name gives away what I was doing last time, which was configuring Jonas Dautel's Playout B software on a much more modern Raspberry Pi, which is part of my setup for the office hours volunteer scheme that I take part in. You can find office hours on YouTube and online at officehours.global. Right, at least I've been able to log into the thing now. So the first step will be to become root, and then change the host name. And I haven't got Joe installed, so I need to use apt-get. I need. I'm realizing that this is a futile exercise because I haven't yet set up networking. So this is going to fail. Hopefully I can find a text editor that I can use in the meantime until I get Wi-Fi working. Yeah, this isn't going to work because I haven't got networking, like I say. So let's fix that first of all. Do we have nano? We do. Control X quits that. No. Right. So nano host name. And this is going to be called LED, imaginatively. And then I want to save and exit. So that's Control X. Yes. Enter. And just to check that that's worked. Oops. It has. Lovely. Right. Next then is to get the Wi-Fi drivers installed. And that's going to be fun. I'm going to have to plug a network cable into it in the first instance in order to be able to do that, aren't I? One moment. Okay, I have stolen the network cable from my printer. That's now plugged into the Raspberry Pi, and I can see some flashing lights, which hopefully mean that it is actually bringing the interface up. And it has an IP address on my local network, so that has worked. Fantastic. Right, in which case we can go back to installing Joe. And there's another apt-get process running, apparently. It's process number 973. Nope, there's no process running there now, so hopefully I can do that. And indeed, it's cleared. Lovely. Right. Right. So we've got Joe installed. Now we need to find out how to install the Wi-Fi drivers, and I will do that on my Mac. So it is an EDIMAX version 2 Wi-Fi driver Raspberry Pi. Let's do a full upgrade just to be sure. I'm already root, so I need to just sudo apt update. I do find it quite amusing that my internet connection has to come through my phone here because the Wi-Fi at the nursing home is 2 megabit per second both ways, and yet using my phone I'm getting 200 megabytes downloaded in just over a minute. It's not bad. again, you'll be very glad of the nature of video. That means you can skip ahead in time, because I've been sitting here for a good long time waiting for that to finish. Okay, so the hostname change is taken, which is good news. So on to the next step, which is to install various bits that are required to make the Wi-Fi work. Helps if I tap on the right keyboard when I'm searching something in Chrome on my Mac. Okay, so now it's time to install the drivers. So I need to download those from GitHub at this URL, github.com. / lwfinger / rtl8188eu.git. And I haven't got Git installed, so I need to do that. And I mean apt. Okay, that's finished. So now we can go back to the previous command. Okay, so now we cd into that folder and we make. Okay, so that's finished. Now we need to install them. And now we need to reboot. According to these instructions I'm following, that should have us our driver in place. Okay, so let's log in. So, let's see, show. Right, well, we've got our Ethernet one live. Wi-Fi isn't because we need to configure it. We're in Network Manager. System connections is where apparently our files live. It seems to know about my Wi-Fi again because it's got the system configuration from my last card I burnt. That's good news. So then I just need to prioritize the Wi-Fi now. There's no device assigned to it though. I think that's probably the problem. So the question is, how do we assign the device? Okay, let's try this. I'm just going to unplug the network cable and then restart. Let's see what happens. Okay, I've just had an idea about what might be causing this. It could simply be that it can't find the network because it's the tiny little USB adapter is using 2.5 gigahertz Wi-Fi and not 5 gigahertz, which is all I have running on my router currently. So I'm going to try turning the 2.5 gigahertz one on and see if that makes a difference. Okay, so let's try. Oh, no, I've got it the wrong way around, haven't I? Systemctl restart network manager, and it might be that's capitalized. And indeed it is. We have a working Wi-Fi connection by the looks of it, so that does appear to be the answer. Yeah, we have a connection. Fantastic. Okay, so the next step is to install the LED software to the machine, and then we're in business. I've got to check next that I am assigning the correct IP address, which is a matter of configuring on my router. In the meantime, I can do this by IP address. It's currently 18. Just log out of there. So back in the virtual machine, I can go to my LED folder where I have both these, and I want to send those to the Raspberry Pi. So I can copy star.bz2, which will get all the files in that direction as it happens, to 192.168.0.18. I need to be des at that, that's the username, :tilde. Putting it in my home directory. Yes, I want to learn that. And there they go. Good. So if I log in then, I should have those files there, and I do. I will make a directory called old LED, and in there I will tar JXVF, that is J for a bzip2 file, X extract, V verbose, and F specify the file name, which is ... etc. tar.bz2. It's being a bit slow. Very slow because I pressed the backspace key to delete that T and it's not disappeared. This is happening over Wi-Fi, but it shouldn't be that slow. No, we seem to have completely lost access to that machine. Huh. I haven't got ping installed on my Ubuntu. That's not good. Let's fix that now. And I'm not root. Right, now I'm root. Let's try that again. Let's try IP utils ping 192.168.0.18. There we go. It is still alive. Have we had any waking up here? No. Oh, yes, we have. Okay, let's just try that again. tar JXVF ... tar.bz2 dot. Oh, no, I don't need that. Right, and then we want to do the same for home. Excellent. Right. I'm going to shut that down. And now that networking is working, I'm going to plug it back in where it belongs on the back of the TV. And because it has network and because it needs the lights plugged in for the software to actually work, it will then be in the right place and I will be able to control it to actually try these things out. So here we go. And again, I need to be root in order to do that, don't I? So it's shut down. I can pull the power out. I can pull the HDMI out. I can pull the keyboard out. I can go and put this on the back of the TV. So here on the back of the TV, we've got the GPIO connector here. It only needs the 2 pins, ground and data, and then the power is provided through a separate 8 amp power supply, which plugs into this black box here, which contains a circuit board that I made to wire everything up the correct way and bring out the connector that connects to the LEDs, which I can plug back in. I need some fingers, 2 hands to do that. So that slots in just like that. It clicks in place. And then, as I say, the GPIO pins, I've labelled them. Pin 1 is shown there, and on the board you can see that pin 1 is labelled. It's very small, but it's this end at the bottom. So this then goes on just like this. Make sure that it is properly secured. Okay, that's on, and not quite flush. That's better. And now I can put the case back together. So the first step is to take these bolts back out. And then put the case back on, and indeed the red one should go through the cable as well. That's unfortunate. I'll take it off again. This is quite hard to remove. It would be easier if I take some of them off. Gradually pulling it from each end, it comes off, and then I can thread that back out. Those should be that way round, and then we should have the red one on there as well. So then the cable can thread all the way, thread through them and plug back into the board. Again, making sure that pin 1 is on the correct side. That is securely positioned. Make sure that all of these laser cut pieces line up. And then we should be able, make sure that we've got it the right way round, to put the top back on. And that is now correct. So now I need to just, I've got the two of the bolts here. So now I can put the bolts through. Oh, I missed the pink one. And now I've dropped the back on the floor. And the purple one, we're doing well. Okay, so with the purple one in place, it should be that way round. We can then put the base on, like so. And then put another bolt through, like that. And let's do up one of these nuts. And the second one. And we need the remaining bolts and the remaining nuts. And that now completes the assembly of the case, which leaves the next step to actually plug it in. So we've got the power cable here, it's actually upside down. There we go. And now that can tuck down inside the frame of the TV. It's too wide to fall down the gap, so I will have it balanced there like that. And feed a bit more of the power cable down to make it easier for it to reach the bottom. And then once it's powered up, we can go and connect to it from my laptop and start setting the lights up. Okay, so back at my laptop, we should now be able to SSH to LED, and apparently we can't. It's interesting because it says it's online. Oh, but it's on the wrong IP. That's interesting. Okay, so it's actually on 192.168.0.18. Having a bit of think. Okay, this appears not to be working. So I have to go and figure out why that is by plugging the HDMI output of the Raspberry Pi into the TV and plugging a keyboard in and working out what's going on. Because my router says the thing's connected. Okay, so here we are back here. We want to mount the LED image, which we need to do as root. As before, the command is k part x minus v minus a, LED image, and so on. And that's now mounted. Having done that, we can then cd to media, I think it was. No, it's in PT, I think, or not. There we go. Right, we should have a var folder here. We do. And do we have a www folder in that? We do. And that indeed has what we need. So, 2022-02-18 is the date today. .tar.bz2, and we want the www folder. There we go. Then we can copy that to des at 192.168.0.18 : we now have the web folder, so that's great. Next, we want to go back to the terminal running on my Mac, and we now have the www folder. We need to become root, and we need to make a www folder and then extract the file we just sent to this machine into that folder. So tar jxvf tilde des/led, and then target is www. I suspect that what I've done is ended up, oh no, it's worked, good. I thought I was going to have a www folder inside the www folder, but it worked out. Excellent. Right, so that's in place. Curious that I don't see a web server. What I might do is try booting from the disk image in parallels. It'd be interesting to know if that worked, for one thing. So let's give that a go, and then hopefully I can find out what the web server is. Okay, well, it turns out that doesn't work. It's unable to boot that. It was worth a try because they are both ARM-based machines, but it's not to be. So fair enough. Okay, what next then? I think I should probably just install Apache and get it over with. Just have this sneaking feeling that I was using a lighter weight web server than that. And given that it's a fairly slow machine, that's probably beneficial. Okay, so that is Apache installed. I also want Homebridge installed, which is a HomeKit server that allows you to control actions on a Raspberry Pi with HomeKit, including through Siri, which is very nice. And I had this set up on the previous server as well. So to do that, I've just found the instructions at homebridge.io. There's a page for installing it on an existing Raspberry Pi operating system, or you can download their image, but obviously I'm a long way into this now, so I will follow the instructions to install it. And so the first thing is to bring the Homebridge GPG key and import it. Then I can add the Homebridge repository to system sources with this command. Then I want to do an apt-get update, which I did as part of this before, so probably not much, if anything, to do. This is downloading the Homebridge repo though, so that is helpful. Then I need to do an apt-get update to update the repositories and bring in the new one that I've added. And now I can install it. Apt-get install Homebridge. Funny how I was worried about the size of Apache 2 and it turned out to be about 2 megabytes. Now I'm installing this. Okay, so that's Homebridge installed. Let's now get these things working. Oh, it's called Apache 2 on here. I think Debian refers to it like that. Okay, and let's do the same for Homebridge. That's why I was looking for HTTPD, and again, Debian calls it Apache 2 consistently. Right, okay, so the default config is enabled. So let's check this. It is available on var www.html, which is where our files are living. That config looks fine. However, PHP isn't enabled, so we need to sort that out. Okay, let's make sure we've got PHP installed. Okay, so that's completed. Let's check that that now works. And it does. There is the home page of my controller for the lights. So I'm going to move all of the backups into a folder called backup. I created the backup folder in old LED, but that's fine. That does actually make sense. I'll just put them in there. Right, so we should have a relatively clean home directory now. Right, the next step then is to get the things out of the home directory that we need. And I believe that was 2021. Okay. Yeah, this is the stuff that we want in the home directory. So copy -rvp. R for recursive, V for verbose, and P for, I can't actually remember what P is for. No dereference. Right, so copy -rvp star tilde. So now we have all of those things in this folder. Let's check. It's all from 2018. And yes, this is a Git repository. Let's just see if we run it, what happens. It seems to be running. So now if I initialize that, it's not able to connect. Now one thing that will help is plugging the power into the lights. Not that that will affect this particularly, but having power to the lights will be helpful. So let's go and do that. No harm in doing a reboot at this point, although being root to do that would help. And it is still not working. Okay, let's go and have a look at how it was initiated before. It doesn't appear that it was from here, which is interesting. One thing you will want to do is update it and recompile. So let's move the server to folder, that is to 2018 1105. I didn't want to move it, I wanted to copy it because I can update that folder. So let's copy it back. I need to make a folder first. There we go. Oh, I put it inside that. Right, let's change that. Yep, that's worked now. Right, so try again. Now we want to compile this. Right, I've not got the desktop version, but let's just do this anyway to be sure. I'm going to need to be root. Then I'll check that we've got everything installed that we need. Okay, that's compiled. Let's see if it will run and work better than the last attempt. No. Do I have to specify the port? That is set to 9999. Oh, it's expecting a device called dev LEDs. That probably doesn't exist. And indeed it doesn't. So we need to create that. That would help, probably. And it wants to run it as root. So let's do the installation. That would be a good start. That is now running the service. Make sure that it runs every start time. Do it as root, because that does tend to help. Let's see. There is no LEDs though. Let's see if anything works better. Oh, I think it does. Yep, the lights are working. Okay, we have it up and running. Fantastic. Okay, now I just need to get the configuration for Homebridge, and then I think the whole thing is working. So it turns out that Homebridge has come a long way since I last used it, and it now has a web interface rather than the way I set up the switches to operate my LEDs from Homebridge previously. There is now a plugin for Homebridge which will do that for me. So I've got the lights working. Unfortunately, I haven't figured out the new version of Homebridge sufficiently to configure that to have it working correctly. I'll have to take a look at that another time. But that's it for the moment. Don't forget to press like if you enjoyed the video or found it useful, and please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. It really helps other people to discover it. See you next time.